We are here today. We're going to be talking about the issue of white supremacy in America, something that I know we all wish we weren't still talking about, and specifically infiltration of white supremacists into local law enforcement, according to an FBI investigation and report that was recently leaked. When we talk about local law enforcement, just want to make it clear we're talking about local law enforcement around the country and not specifically Central Oregon. So when you hear local law enforcement, we're speaking in national terms. And we're very fortunate to have with us to talk about this Teryl Young. Teryl is a Black American, a local person who also has a show on KPOV, Urban Mix, Friday nights at 10 o'clock. Very good show. Teryl's a father, a COCC student, and knows a lot about these issues. And so we're fortunate to have him. Thank you for joining us on The Point this morning, Teryl.
Oh, great to be here. Great to be here. I'm happy.
Good. All right. Fantastic. So I guess we'll just let you start. But what I'm wondering is we want to talk about the infiltration of local law enforcement by white supremacy. But can you tell us, in general, what is your understanding of what white supremacy is?
In general, white supremacy is really a system. It's a system, a belief. It's a religion, to be honest with you. It's kind of like a religion that people who practice it believe in it. They use code words as far as things to say without saying, words that you would normally hear, that would be derogatory towards blacks or any other group. They're just doing it a little bit differently now. They're coding their language in today's standards. All
right. And so you actually brought to my attention this report, this FBI report. Can you tell us, what does this FBI report say about infiltration of local law enforcement by white supremacists?
Well, it just said that the FBI did a report in 2006, and the FBI concluded that there were certain groups that were infiltrating law enforcement, and it has been going on for years. It's interesting that they would do the report in 2006 because we've known this has been happening since the 50s. I mean, this is 1920s, so this is nothing new. It kind of starts. Actually, before then, it started with slave patrols. So you have to go way, way back. But that's the report that they put out. They use terms. White supremacists use terms called ghost skins, where you have white supremacists who enter into law enforcement, but they have to remove their tattoos. They remove certain things or words that they would use that would kind of put them out there as being white supremacists. So the white supremacists use the term ghost skin. So when a person infiltrates, that's how they kind of identify themselves when they're talking amongst themselves secretly. So they use the term in the FBI report called ghost skins.
All right. And does the report shed any light on why white supremacists would want to infiltrate local law enforcement?
Oh, wow. To maintain white supremacy. To maintain white supremacy, that's the main reason. And then they're everywhere. Of course, we know they're all into politics. Of course, they would be in law enforcement. Experiences in school that I've had, I think I've said this before, where, you're in class and that they're white supremacists that are in the classroom based on the speech, the language that they say, and based on things that I've heard personally at COCC.
All right, so you took some criminal justice classes there, and can you give some examples of the white supremacy that you noticed coming in that classroom?
Well, first of all, like I said, just walking into a classroom, there was a guy who had a class before mine, and I came in with 2 or 3 other people. We sat down. He was watching a video of an NBA basketball game or some kind of game on his computer. He didn't know I was sitting in the back, and they was doing what you call a dunking contest. So they was going to the hoop, dunking the ball in the hoop, and he used the N-word, saying that's an N dunk, right? Okay. So he didn't know I was in the back. I asked the other female who was beside me, did she hear? She said, I heard it. So what happened was he left, and I went and talked to the teacher about it. I said, hey, look, this guy who's in law enforcement or trying to be a sheriff, I think that's what he wanted to be, he's using the N-word. I said, that kind of worries me. What are we going to do about it? So we had like about an hour-long talk with the instructor. What's interesting is he saw me, but he kind of left really early. So he kind of jetted out of there, and he never came back. He never came back to the classroom. Him or his friend. They just never came back. I don't know if they dropped the classes but of course, I went up to upper levels of the school administration to talk to Gordon Price at COCC, and I don't know if you're familiar with him. Talked to Tom Berry.
Okay.
Tom Berry, I think he's a local DJ here now.
Yeah, he is a sociology professor at
COCC.
Yeah.
Talked to him, so they were all aware about the things that were going on in there. So, but for him to say something like that outright and to think that he was safe for saying it really alarmed me, and I got kind of nervous because I'm thinking, okay, this guy wants to be a sheriff. Well, we got a problem here. And so what I've been doing over the last 2 to 3 years is inside, when you take nursing, you have to do background checks and things like that. I wanted to implement that into the course, to get a psychological background check for people who are entering that field, so we can kind of weed out the bad apples, kind of see what belief systems, maybe they have. Are they psychologically prepared to become a law enforcement officer? Because when you have people coming in saying the N-word like that and not knowing that I'm in the back, that's a problem for me. That worries me a lot.
Mm-hmm. So back to the FBI report, did they say anything about the extent of this infiltration around the country?
They said there's 18,000 law enforcement agency. They said it was pretty high. It worries me a little bit because I don't understand if they know it's there, why aren't they doing anything about it? They reported it. They know that they're in there, but why aren't they doing anything about it? Is probably the bigger question there.
Mm-hmm. And what's the connection then between? This may be obvious, but it'd be nice if you could explain it a little bit. What's the connection between white supremacists in law enforcement and white supremacy, and then let's talk about the oppression of people of color in general?
Do you mean like the difference between just regular white supremacy and then?
No, I guess the question would be, how is law enforcement related in this country to oppression of people of color?
Well, it's been like that for hundreds of years. I mean, you like I said, you have to go back to the slave patrols.
What were the slave patrols?
Slave patrols were put in ground to get black people who kind of got out of line, or who at that time you had slavery, so people, they own other people, so if they got out of line, they used the slave patrols to go get those slaves who rebelled or wanted to leave. They would get them as kind of like retrieving their slaves and putting them in line.
Okay.
So that's basically kind of how policing got started. That's actually in our law enforcement books that we learn inside the classroom. They skip over it, but but it's there. It's there.
And how does that show up today? So fast forward to 2017. How is that concept of using law enforcement to, I'll say, keep people of color in their place? How does that working today?
Well, it works in all areas. I mean, everywhere you go, like even with the area where I'm from, there are police stations all over the place. There are sheriff stations there, but they definitely have them particularly in the inner city, right in the heart of the city. Like where I'm from, police stations like right around the corner. It's almost like an apartheid type thing where you have like kind of like in South Africa. So they're kind of like, they're all up in the inner city. It's like 2 or 3 of them. An area where I'm from, Uh,
And where are you from?
I'm from Virginia.
Okay.
So there's Charlottesville, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, you just kind of see them all over the place, and it's basically the same thing. It's always been of kind of keep these people in line, and keep them in line, keep them where they're supposed to be, and that's kind of how certain areas, because of the treatment over hundreds of years, is kind of how certain communities look at law enforcement based on the history of what law enforcement is. You had riots where law enforcement joined the riots, in attacking black folks. I mean, law enforcement was in the South where they are the ones that told them to get out of the restaurants, go eat in the back. So that kind of experience, I'm not saying all law enforcement are like that, because they're not. But there are some particular people who are in law enforcement who share those views, and those psychology tests is going to detect that.
Well, I just think it's, I would have never expected that we would have language problems in our community. But I have to say, it's kind of like listening to the term law enforcement. I remember meeting a gentleman one time, and he told me that he was a retired peace officer, which sounds a lot better. And I think we all need to take a few steps back and really start to look at things for what they actually are, instead of, ignoring a lot of what's going on, even in our own community. I was shocked to listen to that story.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking to me, but my major was criminal justice. So when you're in those classes, you already see the tension there. I mean, just sitting down in the classroom, just some of the questions and some of the answers that they would give to the instructor. So I think most people who take law enforcement they mean well. They want to protect and serve our community, but there are some that are in there, for the wrong reasons.
I think it's easy to, for a lot of people that start out wanting to be in law enforcement, it kind of goes to their head and they get a little carried away. And I think it is easy to get carried away. And in these times, that's the last thing we should be doing, is getting carried away. We should be stepping back a few steps. It's not the country it used to be, and it needs to be a much better country. Definitely.
I think, like we're seeing now, basically they're not even hiding it anymore. White supremacists are coming out. They're not hiding it, like the Richard Spencers and the Milos of the country, who I think Richard Spencer spoke not too long ago in Florida. So they're coming out, and it's something that we have to pay attention to. These people are dangerous. So
yeah, I think it really shakes our idea of democracy right to the core. This is a country of equal rights, and it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah. So, Troy, you said that they're not hiding it anymore, which kind of leads me to believe that what we're seeing now has been there.
Yes,
it's just been better hidden. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, it's been hidden. There are all types of reasons. Like on Twitter, they're mad at me and people that I deal with is because we break their codes down. So they get very upset when they use Pepe the Frog. I don't know if people have heard of it. There's a little frog that most white supremacists use. He's green. Sometimes they have him dressed in a little Nazi suit, or there's the OK sign, which really means white power. If you put up a OK, the three fingers are the W, and the O is kind of the P. You see it when I'm doing it now.
See it when you hold it up. Yeah.
So we're breaking down their codes, and they don't like that. There's certain coded language that they use. So I get backlash from Twitter. And then one of the things they like to do is troll. They like to waste your time. You can't change these people's minds. So if you keep arguing with them, that's another tactic that they use they'll call me the N-word. They'll call me all kind of stuff because we're just breaking down their codes. So it's definitely not hidden anymore.
Yeah, why do you think people now feel more comfortable or confident or whatever in just coming right out with the white supremacy, whereas they used to, I guess, feel like they had to hide a little more?
Well, I think it's fear. I think the country demographically is changing. It's fear. And Richard Spencer says that. Richard Spencer, he, at least one thing that white supremacists are never really honest, but he will tell you exactly what he says is fear, is genetic. They're concerned about genetic annihilation, things like that. So it's basically fear. That's why they're coming out more so than they were before when they were hidden.
To me, I have to mention this. There was a film that was done way back in 1999 called Bulworth. And I would encourage all the listeners out there to possibly take a look at that film, because I think it really gives a clear perspective historically on what black people have had to put up with in this country.
Yeah, it's a lot of films. Even Birth of a Nation, 1914 film, I think. That's another film I think people should watch. Another film people should watch is Hidden Colors. That's another great film. And then there's a documentary out called 1804 about the Haitian Revolution. That's now the main media is not saying nothing about it, but it's #1 on Amazon right now. That's another historical view of about white supremacy in Haiti, how the Haitians got the revolution, how that led to, the French giving up the land in the Midwest. So there's a lot of historical DVDs and films that are coming out.
So that's 1804?
Yeah, 1804 is in theaters now. It's just during one of the smaller markets, but the DVD is #1 as we speak right now.
It's kind of like I mentioned Bulworth earlier. I remember seeing Bulworth in 1999 here in Bend, and it was only at the theaters for 2 weeks. But I think there were some comments that were made that weren't particularly popular with corporate.
Oh, wow.
People. Yeah, he took a shot at the movie industry and quite a number of industries.
Wow. All right.
So what's the takeaway? We've got about a minute, and these interviews go fast, in terms of this infiltration with local law enforcement by white supremacists.
I just say that, just keep your eyes open, just be aware. And if you're a person who wants to fight injustice, just be aware of what's going on. We're not going to solve it in 1 year, but as long as we're fighting it and trying to make the country better, I think America will be okay.
I think it's important just plain to talk about it.
Yeah.
And you don't get many chances to have this kind of discussion almost on any other radio station.
Definitely.
Right. We do believe in having the hard conversations here on KPOV for sure, because even though it might make people uncomfortable, sometimes you have to be really uncomfortable in order to learn. And thank you very much, Teryl,
no problem.
Your willingness to come on and talk about this.
You've been listening to a KPOV Critical Conversation. To hear more engaging interviews on important topics, please visit kpov.org/critical-conversations.